Hello everybody, my name is Dratnos, and welcome to This Week in Mythic Plus. This week you've got Raging, Volcanic, Tyrannical, and of course, Shrouded. So, it is a push week. It is a good week for attacking some keystones, getting your IO up, getting your score up, finding your upgrades. I have most of the dungeons, the timer is pretty forgiving in as well, so compared to, say, Season 3, Season 2, you shouldn't even necessarily feel the urge to super big pull the trash to make time for the Tyrannical bosses, because in most of these dungeons this season, you'll find that the timer is pretty lenient by the time you get to the end of the dungeon, if you can avoid wiping. So it's actually mostly a can you defeat these bosses check, and if you can do that, you should be able to push the keys up to a reasonably high level this week without too much difficulty, and usually most groups, your first point of failure is actually going to be a wipe to a boss if you are pulling fairly conservatively. So let's quickly go dungeon by dungeon, talk about the hardest bosses, talk about what you should be doing with your Bloodlust, that kind of stuff. If you're interested in these routes, they're available in the link description below. Grimrail Depot, obviously there's not too much to it. You can skip this pack here. You can actually pull this as well and get your extra Shrouded buff if you want. Also, I would start doing that on higher keys. And you can also grab Zolgamux through the wall before pulling the boss, just jumping and trying to cast instant cast spells on her, and eventually something will pull her. Yeah, doing that's a good idea before the first boss, because you want to be as powerful as possible for this really tough first boss if you're doing it on a higher level key. This is usually the boss that ends the run for good groups. Obviously, the other bosses can cause problems as well, but this tends to be the one that's the trickiest for groups that are dodging all the avoidable mechanics. So that's a good one for Bloodlust. Obviously, bloodlusting bosses in general is what you'll want to do in here. Yeah, Dox actually has several fairly nasty bosses as well. Tyrannical last boss in here can kind of take ages. Tyrannical Oshir. Ideally, you want to have people in your group, like the big thing on this boss, if you have stuff like Vanish, like rogues should be saving their Vanish for when they're targeted by time to feed and not using it just for damage. And then, yeah, Night Elf Racial, Feign Death, any other threat drop, Invis, that kind of stuff. Immunes, you want to save those and use them against the time to feed, and you want to AoE crowd control and nuke down the wolves when they come out. Streets of Wonder. This one, you can actually, again, I would recommend just hunting down all of the Shrouded buffs that you can before going into the end of the dungeon, before getting all of the bosses. I still like heading left on this dungeon, even on this week, but this week in particular is when heading left is less relatively good compared to the other weeks, because there's no on-death affix that you're dodging on this annoying area with on-death affixes, and this sets you up to do Menagerie first. Menagerie is usually a boss, like, if you save Menagerie for last, that's often good on Tyrannical weeks, although Postmaster, doing it later, is also nice on Tyrannical weeks, because whichever bosses you choose to do later, you'll have more Shrouded buffs for, right? I would say Postmaster is the one that I would most want Lust for, too, so if you can set this up, then do that. The way you can kind of manipulate this is as you're getting close to Postmaster, if Bloodlust is ready, just go straight to it. If Bloodlust is not ready, you can do Mize's Oasis first. Solia's Gambit, this is probably the dungeon where the timer is going to be the harshest on you on this week, so you should feel a little bit more pressure to be pulling the trash quickly than in the other dungeons. The little monologue I did at the start of this video about how if you're pulling safe, you'll time your keys as long as you don't wipe. Not as true in Solia's Gambit. This is also a dungeon where you can just find that 30 minutes have passed pretty quickly. Junkyard, Gunker first should work for NA. I think it should work for EU as well. I'm not 100% sure. Double check to see where the hard mode thing is and grab the Trixie first route if you need instead. And yeah, great week for Junkyard. Affixes that really shouldn't cause too much trouble at all. And yeah, just make sure you don't die and lose your bots. Pull carefully through the dungeon, nuke the bosses with your robots, and that's it. That's all there is to it. Workshop, fairly tricky dungeon for Tyrannical. A lot of nasty bosses. Last boss, second to last boss. Those ones will be tough for a lot of groups, but you know, the other affixes at least are not very bad. Lower Karazhan. Okay, so Lower Karazhan, I used to have I've made a lot of different routes for this place. The one that I'm currently recommending, the one that I'm currently putting out, is a Death after Opera, but it's not actually right after Opera. it is after Zul'Gamux. So after Zul'Gamux, you just run over here or run down here, die, go back to the start, and then you can go hop down and do Morose. And ideally, Bloodlust is coming up right around when you're pulling Morose. Depends on exactly how you're sequencing this and exactly how long it takes you to do everything. But then you get to Morose and do Morose. Do Morose, hop on down, do Ataman, come back up, get to Maiden, and bang, you're done. You can do more, you can skip more of these enemies. You can skip, in particular, the Maiden Hallway is good stuff to skip. I don't think it's quite so good to recommend it to pugs to try and skip this. I've seen a lot of pugs struggle with skipping this hallway in particular. Kind of not sure why. It's not particularly hard, but because of that, I've taken it out of the route. But if you wanted to unskip Maiden Hallway and add the trash under here and just keep running instead of death skipping after Zul'Gamux, do this trash. You could even do these ushers now. They're not that bad anymore. You could do that instead. If you want, you could do the Echo Spider pull area. You could do pulls in the Spider area. That's something you could try. You could also try the Chef area, the Guardsman area. Like, there is a lot of cool options in Lower Karazhan, and none of them are bad ideas. By no way is this route the best way to handle this dungeon. This is just ideally one that should make sense for pugs and should be not bad. But any coordinated group should, especially in this dungeon, be coming up with their own plan, be setting up something that gets them the Shrouded Sacks they want and the Bloodlust where they want them reliably. And so you should do that. You should be deviating from this as soon as you are pushing keys. And then finally, we've got Upper Karazhan. Upper Karazhan, hold W, walk through the dungeon in a straight line, skip these two if you can. You can just Warlock Gateway or walk carefully through the middle. Warlock Gateway is the best way, though. Straight up the middle, skip these two. You don't need the count. But a lot of groups are going to end up pulling these anyways. It is fine. The timer in this dungeon is unbelievably lenient. You literally just have to not wipe to Curator, and then after you don't wipe to Curator, you have to not wipe to Shade of Medivh, and then after that, you have to not wipe to Mana Devourer, and then after that, you have to not wipe to, well, you have to not int your skip too bad. Skipping through this is very good. Doing invis pots for it is very good. This is the kind of thing where it's like, this skip is profitable enough that I recommend it for pugs. There's nothing in like Lower Karazhan that I think is that important to skip, but in Upper, yeah, if you could get one skip in any Season 4 dungeon, it would be this one right here. This is a very nasty area, but Shroud doesn't work particularly well for it. A lot of people will mess up the Shroud, so I would just invis pot the whole group, even if you have a rogue through this area. And then, yeah, chess event, and then don't wipe to Vizdoom, and bang, dungeon in time with 7 minutes to spare, no matter how slowly you've pulled this area. So that's a look at the dungeons this week. That's a look at the affixes and stuff as well. Hope you enjoyed this video. Good luck in your keystones. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one. Bye.